Fighting the Great Reset by leading the Great Resistance. Maverick News. The antivirus programs for your mind.
It's on full display. All Joe Biden cares about is the next business deal that he can use to where he's using his influence. It's just brazen. It's on full display. They don't even try to hide it. The corruption is on full display, and people are still going to vote for the guy. It blows my mind.
Blows my mind too. I mean, Diane Sayre, who was here earlier. Chuck Schumer is so bloody unpopular. I mean, how does that guy keep getting reelected? How do the warmongers like Nancy Pelosi and Senator Lindsey Graham, how do they keep winning elections? I'll tell you how. Because they're keeping the good guys and gals like Diane Sayre off the ballots, off the debate stage. And that goes for my guy, Kennedy, too. And they're trying to lock up a former president of the United States, Donald Trump. It's an outrage.
And silence us and Justin Trudeau with his policies also. Look what's happened there. Censorship, Bill C-18, C-11, news like gone off Facebook tonight. We're gone off Facebook because people are not being allowed to see what we are producing. Gone on YouTube. This is the result of government policy in Canada and in the US.
Same policy, same type of leaders, different countries, but that's the only difference. It's just a border between us, but we're in the same damn boat, all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have some thoughts on that question that you raised, Lori. I was thinking about, after the war, after World War II, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was dead. And who did you have come in? You had Harry Truman. He was the one who dropped the nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You had a complete change of leadership.
And FDR never would have done that. No. I'm convinced. Never.
No, he never would have done that. No. Right? If you see the Oppenheimer movie, a lot of younger folks who don't know the history, the reason why there was such a race to get the nuclear bomb is because the Nazis were building the bomb. Mm-hmm. And so the idea is that we had to get the bomb before the Nazis did, because if they got it, then they would blow up the world and control everybody. So there was this, it sounds crazy.
Oh, but it was a legitimate fear.
It was legitimate.
Absolutely.
So right, I agree. FDR never would have done that. And so what did you have? You had a change of leadership that happened in the United States and a capitulation on morality, really. And that's when you really started to see this Bertrand Russell. We were talking about this earlier, Rick, this Bertrand Russell idea of brainwashing, right? A lot of the music started to become more repetitive. A lot of the education started to get worse. People started to, assert funny things into the culture. And when you had good presidents or you had decent people in power, what happened? They were killed. Right? Look at what happened to John F. Kennedy or Robert F. Kennedy. Right? You had that whole slew of a very short amount of time, right? Where just political, not just in the United States, but internationally, political leaders were being assassinated. And we had put out this report called the International Assassination Bureau for the LaRouche Organization, which documents what this was, why they did it. It's how it affects the way people think. Because the effect of that is that they basically, this is the State Department, it's an empire network. Basically what they're saying to people is, if you have the nerve to stand up and say the truth, then we're going to kill you. And that terrified anybody, right? Neil Gallagher, right? This was a congressman who was a personal friend of John F. Kennedy. He wrote whole books. He went after the network, going after John F. Kennedy to hide the magic bullet. I mean, anybody's going to believe a magic bullet killed the president of the United States? Give me a fucking break. That's right. This is crazy. but this was rammed down the people's throats. And Neil Gallagher was ousted from government. I think they actually like put a fake or a dead body in his basement or something like that. There was something that happened.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yes, they did.
Yeah. And
yeah, it's like the Godfather putting a
yeah.
horse's head in your bed, just send you a message. you know?
Right.
Yeah.
So you had that whole process of people who were decent people who wanted to fight for the truth, and they were just completely ousted out of government. So anybody who since then has just been terrified to say the
Ron
truth.
Paul, Tulsi Gabbard, who was ran out of Congress. Ron
Yeah.
Paul was forced to resign because they redistricted his district, and same with Tulsi. It's like all the good guys and gals, if they can keep their jobs in Congress, they're very lonely. They're a small minority who, they don't have the votes to pass good legislation. We need to elect more good guys and good gals in the Congress, in the Senate. That's why I'm glad that Diane's making another run for it. I hope people in New York will vote for her. She is an honest person. We need to get honest people and get these corrupt guys like Senator Graham out. We need to get these warmongers out, get the neocons out, and keep the good guys in. That's why I'm not a fan of term limits. I'm always harping about term limits on this show. There's kind of a movement out there because people are so
I agree
sick.
with you, actually.
Yeah,
I agree
I'm
with
glad.
you.
Glad to hear that. I think we need to repeal the 22nd Amendment, because you were speaking of Harry Truman. The 22nd Amendment was passed in 1947. And it's important for people to realize why we had the 22nd Amendment. The Republicans took control of Congress after Franklin Delano Roosevelt served an unprecedented 4 terms. He was reelected by a huge majority every time. Republicans voted for him.
Yeah.
The country wanted him. They felt he was the best man for the job. And literally would not let him leave office, even when he was visibly ill and dying. But they still would not let him go because they loved him that much. And so when the Republicans took control of Congress, they passed the 22nd Amendment, which said we're never going to have another president for more than 2 terms. Now, of course, that does not apply to Congress. Congress critters can sit there until they're 100 years old. Look at Dianne Feinstein, for crying out loud. She's not even in her right mind anymore. And our Congress is full of them. People think that term limits are the answer, but they're really not. That's a false choice. For example, if you're Apple, would you want to fire Steve Jobs? If you're Tesla, do you want to get rid of Elon Musk after 8 years? I mean, you want to reward your good employees. You want to keep them, especially if you have a good leader, if you're lucky enough to get a good guy or good gal elected, you want to keep them. You want to vote the bad guys out and keep the good guys in. So that's why term limits are not the answer. That would force the good guys out after only 8 years. And there's also a lot to be said for stability. That's another good reason to get rid of presidential term limits, because you look at countries like, well, since we're talking about Russia, Vladimir Putin. He's been president off and on for 20 some odd years now. Xi Jinping in China and other countries, they tend to have one leader for a long period of time, and it brings them stability that you just can't get when you're changing horses every 4 to 8 years like we do here in the States, because the new guy comes in and undoes anything that was good that the last guy did. Why? Because partisan politics. Look at what Joe Biden has done since he took office. He immediately reversed pretty much every good policy that Donald Trump had. Our southern border is just one example. So yeah, I'm all for getting rid of that 22nd Amendment and getting some stability in our leadership and getting some good people in there and keeping them there, because the good guys are always forced out of Congress one way or another.
Yeah, and then addressing why we have so many bad ones, who keep getting in there, like this culture, this depraved culture that we have. Like, I mean, whenever I talk to people about these term limit things, which is, I mean, I agree. I think just rotating bad people, a lot of bad people into the government doesn't really solve the problem. You're just saying, well, let's get a lot of turds in there. Like, you know, we've got one turd, we'll just get more in there. And it's a terrible idea. Like, let's actually get to the core of the problem. The problem isn't the limits or how long they're in there. The problem is that they're in there in the first place.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.